Can I help you translate that? Black waitress shocked the billionaire CEO by speaking 5 languages. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. Imagine this, a luxurious restaurant in the heart of New York City, a place where the world's wealthiest businessmen gather to seal multi-million-dollar deals. The chandeliers gleam above the polished marble floors, and the sound of clinking glasses fills the air as a sleek, black-tie event unfolds. At the center of this exclusive gathering sits Richard Keegan, a self-made billionaire with a reputation for ruthless business moves. He's known for his quick wit and even quicker judgments, particularly when it comes to people beneath his social class. The servers in this upscale restaurant know their place. They're there to serve, not to speak unless spoken to. And that's exactly how Richard likes it. At his table, where power and influence are in full display, no one dares challenge his authority. But there's one person in this room who's about to change everything. Meet Emma Jones, a 25-year-old waitress who's been working here for just a few months. On the outside, she's just like every other server, unnoticed, blending in with the background. But what no one knows is that Emma has a secret. She's fluent in 5 different languages, a talent that's been hidden from the world until now. She didn't learn these languages out of necessity, but out of passion, the kind of passion that comes from growing up in a multicultural household where communication is key to understanding the world around you. Emma's eyes are sharp, and her mind is even sharper. She's worked hard to get where she is, not just as a waitress, but as a student of life. And tonight, her life is about to take an unexpected turn. As Emma walks past Richard's table, he glances at her with a sneer, a look that's all too familiar to her. "Hey, sweetheart," he says loudly enough for everyone at the table to hear. "Can you help me translate this menu? I'm sure you can't even read half of it in English." The room falls silent. All eyes turn to Emma. The subtle insult is clear, and the guests at the table chuckle, thinking it's all in good fun. Emma doesn't flinch. She keeps her calm, as she always does, and without missing a beat, she responds in perfect French. "Actually, I can read and speak French, Spanish, Italian, German, and Japanese. And if you'd like, I can help you understand the menu in all 5 languages." A stunned silence follows. Richard's confident smirk falters, and his eyes widen in disbelief. The laughter from the table dies down. No one expected this. Emma has just shocked a room full of high-powered executives with her hidden talent. The look on Richard's face says it all. He never thought someone like her could have the skills he's only seen in his business circles. And now he's speechless. The power in the room has shifted, and for the first time tonight, Emma has everyone's attention. What happens next will change the dynamics of this evening, and possibly Emma's life forever. Stay with us, because you won't want to miss how this story unfolds. The room was still. Emma's response had left everyone at Richard's table frozen, but the silence didn't last long. Richard, still stunned, cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. His eyes narrowed, and his smug smile slowly returned as if he was trying to brush off the moment of shock. He leaned back in his chair and gave a forced chuckle, as though to dismiss the surprise Emma had caused. Well, looks like we've got ourselves a polyglot," Richard said with a fake laugh, attempting to maintain control of the situation. "I guess I underestimated you." Emma, however, wasn't looking for his approval. She simply smiled, her calm demeanor unwavering. Her mind was elsewhere, thinking about how the world often underestimated people like her, just because of her job, her appearance, and the assumptions people made about her based on her role as a waitress. As Emma continued to serve the table, she could feel the eyes of the entire room on her. It wasn't just Richard anymore. Everyone was watching her. She could hear the hushed whispers from the other guests at the table, murmuring to each other in disbelief. A few of them tried to hide their surprise, but Emma could see the change in their expressions. Richard may have tried to dismiss her with a casual remark, but the reality was that he had just been shown something that didn't fit into his worldview. The reality was that Emma had just proven herself, and now she was something more than a waitress in their eyes. As Emma moved around the table, One of the guests, a middle-aged man in a designer suit, leaned in towards Richard. She speaks 5 languages? That's impressive, he said, still processing the moment. Richard's gaze shifted to the man, then back to Emma. He had to admit, the power dynamic had shifted. He had just insulted her, and now, she was the one in control. I'll admit, that's not something I expected, Richard said, his voice softer now. But it's just a trick, right? You can't really be this good. People don't just casually know 5 languages. Emma's smile never wavered. She wasn't here to prove anything to him, but she couldn't resist one final response. Language isn't a trick, Mr. Keegan. It's a tool. A tool for understanding, for connecting, and for learning. Something that can help bridge worlds and break down barriers. The guests around the table fell silent again. Emma's words hung in the air, leaving Richard and everyone else at the table with something to think about. Richard's face showed a flicker of respect now, mixed with a hint of embarrassment. For a moment, he wasn't the powerful CEO in charge of a billion-dollar empire. He was simply a man who had underestimated someone who had the skills to outsmart him in a way he hadn't expected. But Richard wasn't about to let Emma see how much her words had gotten to him. He quickly shifted the conversation to another topic, but it was clear that the moment had already passed. Emma had shown him, and everyone else in the room, that she wasn't just a waitress. She was someone with value, someone who had something to offer far beyond what anyone had ever assumed. As the evening went on, the guests couldn't help but talk about her in hushed tones, whispering about the talented young woman who had just flipped the script. Meanwhile, Emma remained calm and composed, going about her work with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was capable of. But deep down, Emma knew this was only the beginning. She had just shown them who she really was. And, as the night drew to a close, Richard Keegan wasn't the only one who had learned a valuable lesson. Everyone in that room had witnessed something remarkable, the power of not being seen and the strength of quietly taking control. When Emma walked out of the restaurant that night, she didn't just walk out as a waitress. She walked out as someone who had proved her worth, someone who had been underestimated for far too long, and who was now ready to take on whatever the world had to offer. The night was winding down, but the air still crackled with the energy of what had just transpired. Emma had made her mark, but what she didn't realize was that her actions were starting to ripple through the lives of everyone in that room. As the evening came to an end, the guests began to trickle out, each of them still processing what they had witnessed. But Emma's shift wasn't over. She still had to finish up and lock up for the night. The bustling, luxurious atmosphere of the restaurant slowly began to quiet as the last of the guests made their way out the door, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change. She had known all along that she was more than just a waitress, but tonight, for the first time, others had seen it too. As she was finishing her duties, the sound of footsteps behind her made her pause. She turned around to find Richard Keegan standing there, a rare sincerity in his eyes. He wasn't the same man who had looked down on her earlier. This time, he wasn't just the billionaire CEO. He was a man who had just been humbled. Emma, Richard began, his voice softer than it had been all evening. I owe you an apology. I misjudged you. I thought I knew everything about success, about what people are capable of. But tonight, you showed me something different. Emma gave a small smile, but she didn't say anything. She had already said what needed to be said in that moment of silence earlier. I'd like to offer you something, Richard continued. I don't know if it will mean anything to you, but I'd like to invite you to join my company. Not as a waitress, but as part of our international team. You've got skills that go far beyond what I imagined, and I think you could make a real difference. Emma blinked, surprised by his offer. She wasn't sure how to respond. It was the kind of opportunity she'd only ever dreamed of, but a part of her hesitated. Was it real? Was this just another way to keep her in her place, dressed up as an opportunity? Richard seemed to sense her hesitation. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I've seen firsthand what you're capable of. You're smart, you're driven, and you've got the kind of mindset that could take you far. You don't have to stay here forever, Emma. You deserve better. Emma stood still, her heart racing. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a chance to step out of the shadows and into the world she had always dreamed of. But even as she weighed the offer, she couldn't forget the years she had spent fighting to be seen, fighting to prove that she was more than what people thought of her. She wasn't sure she was ready to let go of that fight just yet. Thank you, Richard, she said, her voice steady. but I think I need some time to think it over. Richard nodded, respecting her space. Of course. Take your time. I know what I've just offered is a lot to process. With that, he turned to leave, but before he stepped out the door, he looked back at Emma one last time. You've got something special, Emma. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As the door closed behind him, Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. It was a lot to take in, and as she stood there in the empty restaurant, she realized that her life was about to take a turn she hadn't expected. She had always believed that she could be more, but now, it seemed that someone else believed it too. The question was, what would she do with this new opportunity? And what would it mean for her future? For now, Emma wasn't sure. But as she walked out of the restaurant for the night, the weight of the decision ahead of her felt a little lighter. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she might actually be on the path to something more. She had taken a step towards being seen, and there was no going back. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never again be the invisible waitress in the corner. The next few days were a whirlwind for Emma. Richard Keegan's offer had taken her by surprise, and she found herself questioning everything she had known about her place in the world. She had always believed in working hard, in staying under the radar, and in never expecting anything from anyone. But now, with this opportunity sitting in front of her, Emma couldn't help but wonder if maybe it was time to stop hiding. She had spent years pouring all of herself into her work, watching the world move around her, and now, just like that, everything had changed. The job offer was real, and Richard had made it clear that he saw something in her that others hadn't. It was tempting, far more tempting than anything she had ever imagined. But even as she considered it, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still being judged. People had always judged her. They saw her as just another waitress, a person who served drinks, a person who smiled and nodded and disappeared into the background. And while she had fought for years to prove herself, to show that she was more than what people saw, she wasn't sure if she could trust this sudden change in the way people viewed her. As Emma walked into the restaurant that evening, she could feel the weight of the decision hanging on her shoulders. The familiar sound of clinking glasses and chatter filled the air, but this time, it felt different. This time, she wasn't just walking into a job. She was walking into a world that had just started to see her. And that was both thrilling and terrifying. As she moved through the restaurant, she noticed the way people looked at her. It wasn't the same as before. There was a new respect in their eyes, a subtle shift that told her she wasn't just invisible anymore. And yet, as much as she tried to enjoy the newfound attention, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. What if they were just giving her this respect because of Richard's offer? What if, once she declined, they would go back to seeing her as just another server? These thoughts gnawed at her as she made her way to the back office, where her manager, Claire, was waiting. Hey, Emma, Claire greeted her with a smile. How's everything going? Good, Emma replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Just, thinking about something. Claire raised an eyebrow, sensing that something was off. What's on your mind? She asked. Emma hesitated, then decided to share. Richard Keegan offered me a job, she said quietly. He wants me to join his company. Not as a waitress, but as part of the international team. Claire's eyes widened in surprise. Wow, that's huge. What are you going to do? Emma looked down at the floor, her hands twisting together nervously. I don't know. It feels like a big step, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. Claire placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, offering a comforting smile. You're more than ready, she said softly. You've got talent, Emma. And if you don't take this opportunity, you'll be missing out. You've worked so hard to get here, and you deserve more than this. You deserve to be seen for who you really are. Emma looked up at Claire, feeling a lump form in her throat. It had been so long since anyone had said anything like that to her. Thanks, Claire, she whispered. I'm scared. Claire nodded. I get it. But you can't let fear hold you back. You've already proven yourself. Now it's time to take the leap. The rest of the night went by in a blur. Emma went through the motions, serving guests and cleaning tables, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about Claire's words. She kept thinking about Richard's offer. And for the first time in a long time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, it was time for her to step into the light. That night, as Emma walked out of the restaurant and into the cool night air, she made a decision. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. She wasn't going to be invisible, not anymore. She was going to take that leap, and no matter where it led, She was going to prove that she was worth more than just the role she had been assigned. She was worth more than the judgment of others. She was ready to be seen. The next morning, Emma called Richard. "I've thought about your offer," she said, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "And I'm in." Richard's voice on the other end of the line was filled with surprise and genuine excitement. "That's great, Emma. I knew you'd make the right decision." As the conversation ended, Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. This was just the beginning of her new journey, and for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The next few weeks felt like a dream for Emma. The moment she made the decision to accept Richard Keegan's offer, her life shifted in ways she had never imagined. No longer confined to the back of the restaurant, she was now part of a global team, working in an entirely different world, a world of high-stakes deals, international meetings, and business trips that took her to places she had only read about. The first day at the new job felt surreal. Emma walked into the sleek, modern office of Keegan Industries, a place that seemed so far removed from the life she had known as a waitress. The polished floors, glass walls, and the hum of busy executives all around her made her feel like an imposter at first. But as the days went by, she began to adjust. She sat in meetings with powerful people, discussing contracts, negotiations, and strategies that could impact millions of dollars. But through it all, Emma remained grounded. She never lost sight of where she came from. She knew she wasn't here just because Richard believed in her skills. She was here because she had worked hard, because she had never stopped believing that she deserved more than what life had initially handed her. Her team was supportive, but there was a subtle undertone of doubt in some of their eyes. Emma could tell that many still saw her as the waitress who had somehow found her way into a corporate environment. They didn't understand her, and perhaps she didn't quite understand them either. But that didn't bother Emma. She had learned long ago that the world often underestimates people like her, and she wasn't about to let their doubts define her. One afternoon, as she sat in a conference room with a group of executives, the subject of an upcoming merger was being discussed. Richard, as usual, was confident and commanding, but there was a moment when the conversation shifted. One of the senior members of the team, a man named Greg, looked at Emma and asked, "So, Emma, what do you think about this deal?" Emma paused, feeling all eyes on her. For a moment, she thought about shrinking back, but something inside her clicked. She wasn't going to be the quiet one anymore. She wasn't going to stay in the background. She took a deep breath and spoke up, offering her analysis of the merger, pointing out key details about market trends, potential risks, and opportunities for growth that no one else had mentioned. As she spoke, she noticed Richard watching her intently. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with a subtle look of approval. When she finished, there was a long silence in the room. Then, Greg nodded, looking impressed. "I hadn't thought of that," he admitted. "Good point." Richard, never one to shy away from praise, turned to the group. "See? This is why I hired Emma. She's got a perspective that no one else has. She's a natural." That moment, small as it may have seemed, was a turning point for Emma. She had just earned the respect of her colleagues, not because of Richard's endorsement, but because of her own ability. From that day on, things began to change. Emma started to feel more at ease in her new role. She wasn't just a token hire anymore. She was a valued member of the team, and she could feel the shift in how people viewed her. The work was still challenging, but Emma had learned how to handle pressure. She quickly gained a reputation for being reliable, sharp, and, most importantly, for never backing down when it came to standing up for what she believed was right. But there was still one part of her that hadn't fully embraced the new life. Every time she walked through the glass doors of the office, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. Was she really cut out for this world? Or was she just playing the part, waiting for the day when someone would figure out she didn't belong? It was at a business conference in Chicago, several months into her new role, that Emma truly found her answer. The event was a gala, and Emma was seated at a table with some of the most influential business figures in the country. As the night wore on, she listened to their conversations about stock prices, international deals, and multi-million-dollar investments. She realized something that shifted her entire perspective. She belonged here. The moment was subtle, no dramatic revelation or life-altering event, but Emma understood. She wasn't the waitress anymore. She was a woman who had fought for her place at this table, who had earned it with her knowledge, hard work, and determination. That night, As she returned to her hotel room, Emma stood in front of the mirror and smiled. She was finally living the life she had dreamed of, not because someone else had given her a chance, but because she had earned it. And she wasn't going to let anyone make her feel like she didn't deserve to be here. Emma had come a long way from the invisible waitress in the restaurant. She had proven herself, not just to Richard or her colleagues, but to herself. And from that moment on, she knew she would continue to rise, no matter what the world threw her way. As Emma continued to settle into her new role, she began to realize just how much of a difference a few months had made. What once felt like a foreign world, full of doubt and uncertainty, was now a place she belonged. She had proven herself in meetings, earned the respect of her peers, and gained confidence in her abilities. But with success came new challenges, and Emma was starting to feel the weight of her own growth. One evening, as she walked into the office for a late-night meeting, she noticed a new project on her desk. It was a proposal for a high-profile international deal that had the potential to shape the future of Keegan Industries. The deadline was tight, and the pressure was on. But for Emma, this was an opportunity to truly prove her worth, to show that she was ready for the next level. As the meeting began, Richard Keegan, along with his senior team, laid out the details. The stakes were higher than anything Emma had worked on before. There was no room for mistakes. As Richard spoke, Emma listened intently, her mind working through the numbers, the logistics, and the potential risks. She had learned how to analyze deals like this during her time at the company, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about the money, it was about her future. When Richard asked for input, Emma didn't hesitate. She spoke up, offering a strategy to mitigate risks in the international markets, suggesting a more cautious approach in some regions while pushing for growth in others. Her suggestions were met with silence at first, but then Richard nodded. "That's exactly what we need," he said, his voice steady. "I knew bringing you on this project was the right move." Emma's heart raced as the meeting continued. She could feel the respect growing in the room. She wasn't just the new hire anymore. She was an integral part of the team, and her ideas were valued. As the meeting ended, Richard pulled her aside. "You've really stepped up, Emma," he said. "This project is yours to lead. I trust you to handle it." Emma was stunned. She had worked hard, yes, but to be given the reins of such an important project was something she hadn't expected so soon. "Thank you, Richard," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I won't let you down." Over the next few weeks, Emma threw herself into the project. She worked late into the night, analyzing data, negotiating with international partners, and managing the complexities of the deal. Every challenge was met with determination. Every setback was a lesson. She was learning, growing, and proving to herself that she was capable of much more than she had ever imagined. But with success came new pressure. Emma found herself stretched thin, balancing the demands of the project with her personal life. There were moments when she felt overwhelmed, when the weight of it all seemed too much. She missed the simplicity of her old life, the quiet evenings after work, the slow pace of serving tables. But deep down, Emma knew she couldn't go back. She had made her choice, and now there was no turning back. One night, after a particularly grueling day, Emma sat in her office, staring out at the city skyline. The lights of New York shimmered below her, a symbol of the world she had entered. She had come so far from the girl who had once waited tables in a restaurant, invisible to the world. Now, she was in the thick of it, making decisions that would shape the future of a multi-billion-dollar company. And as the realization settled in, Emma smiled to herself. She had done it. She had proven herself. Not just to Richard, not just to her colleagues, but to herself. She was no longer the girl in the background, the one who was underestimated. She was Emma Jones, a leader in her own right, and she wasn't going anywhere. The deal, once completed, became one of the most successful ventures Keegan Industries had ever undertaken. Emma's leadership was hailed as a turning point for the company, and soon, she was being asked to take on more responsibilities. It wasn't just her intelligence that had earned her success, it was her grit, her ability to fight through doubt, and her unwavering belief in herself. But even as she stood on the cusp of greater success, Emma knew that her journey was far from over. This was only the beginning. There were more challenges ahead, more opportunities to seize, and more obstacles to overcome. And Emma was ready for all of it. As the months passed, Emma continued to rise within the company. She was no longer just the waitress turned executive. She was Emma Jones, a force to be reckoned with. She had faced adversity, had been underestimated at every turn, and had proven time and time again that she was more than capable of handling whatever came her way. Looking back on everything, Emma knew that she had fought for every inch of her success. No one had handed her anything. She had earned it all, and now, she was ready for whatever the future held. Emma's rise at Keegan Industries had been nothing short of remarkable. From the waitress at a high-end restaurant to an influential executive managing multi-million-dollar deals, she had carved her path, proving time and time again that she belonged in this world. But just as quickly as her career had soared, new challenges were beginning to surface. The company was growing at an exponential rate, and with that came an increased level of responsibility. Emma was now in charge of overseeing not just the international deals, but also the company's expansion into new markets. The pressure was mounting, and she felt the weight of it every day. But what worried Emma most was not the work itself, but the growing realization that her success had made her a target. It wasn't that she was being overtly attacked, but the subtle whispers were starting to echo in the corridors of Keegan Industries. Some of her colleagues, the ones who had once welcomed her with open arms, were now looking at her differently. There was a shift in the way they interacted with her, a mix of jealousy, distrust, and fear. They knew Emma was climbing faster than anyone had anticipated, and some were beginning to feel threatened by her success. It started with small comments, offhand remarks that could easily be brushed aside. "I wonder if Emma's been given all the best opportunities because of Richard," one colleague said during a break. "Must be nice to have a direct line to the CEO," another added. At first, Emma ignored these comments. She believed in her abilities, and she didn't need validation from anyone. But over time, these remarks began to eat away at her confidence. She had always been the type to prove herself through hard work, but now, it felt like no matter how hard she worked, it wasn't enough. People saw her as the beneficiary of a lucky break, rather than someone who had earned every step of the way. As the weeks passed, Emma began to feel the isolation. She was invited to fewer group meetings, her emails were sometimes overlooked, and the usual camaraderie she once had with her team was slipping away. What hurt the most was that she couldn't put her finger on why it was happening. Was it because of her success? Or was it because they saw her as a reminder of how far they still had to climb? One afternoon, after a particularly tense meeting, Emma found herself in Richard's office. He was reviewing the latest figures for the upcoming fiscal year when she walked in. Without saying a word, she sat down in the chair across from his desk, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Emma, what's going on?" Richard asked, his voice softer than usual. "I've been hearing some things around the office. You've been keeping to yourself more lately. Is everything all right?" Emma hesitated before speaking. "I don't know, Richard. I feel like I'm losing the people I work with. Like they're starting to resent me for something I don't understand. I can't shake the feeling that they don't see me the way they used to." Richard's expression softened. "I know you've worked hard, Emma, and you're right to feel like you've earned everything. But in this world, success can sometimes be a double-edged sword. People see what they want to see, and sometimes they see you as a threat." Emma looked up at him, her voice shaky. "I don't want to be seen as a threat. I just want to prove myself." Richard nodded, understanding the frustration in her voice. "You've already proven yourself, Emma. But remember, not everyone is going to cheer for you when you're climbing. Some will respect you, some will resent you, and some will even try to bring you down. The key is to stay true to yourself. Don't let them change who you are." Emma's heart ached as she listened to Richard. She had always prided herself on her integrity, on staying grounded despite the world's judgments. But now, it felt harder than ever to keep that integrity intact when the world seemed so focused on what she had that they didn't. The next few days were quiet for Emma. She kept her head down, focusing on her work, but the weight of the office politics was starting to get to her. One morning, as she walked into the office, she noticed a new email from Richard in her inbox. It was simple: "Meeting at 10 a.m. in my office. We need to talk." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected another one-on-one meeting so soon. Was he going to tell her that her success was now too much for the company to handle? Or was he going to offer her a solution to the growing tension she felt around the office? As the clock struck 10, Emma walked into Richard's office, her stomach turning in knots. Richard motioned for her to sit, and as soon as she did, he leaned forward, a serious look on his face. "Emma, I've been thinking about our conversation. And I know you're facing challenges right now, but I want to offer you something. I'm putting you in charge of a new initiative, one that will allow you to bring more people together, create a team that can really work collaboratively. You've got the vision, and I trust you to make this company even better. This is your chance to show everyone what you're made of. Emma's eyes widened. This was it, the chance to not only prove herself to the company, but also to unite the team, to show them that her success wasn't just her own. It was a reflection of the work they had all put in together. Thank you, Richard, Emma said, her voice steady with determination. I won't let you down. Emma's new initiative was a pivotal moment in her career, one that would not only define her future at Keegan Industries, but also demonstrate her ability to lead and unite her team. The pressure was on, and the stakes were higher than ever. But Emma wasn't intimidated. She had fought for everything she had achieved, and now, she was ready to take on the challenge. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into the project. She spent long hours planning, organizing, and strategizing. Her goal was clear. She needed to build a team that could work together seamlessly, a group of people who could collaborate without egos getting in the way. It wasn't an easy task. The team she was assembling consisted of high-level executives, each with their own vision, their own way of doing things. Emma had always believed in the power of teamwork, but she quickly realized that this group wasn't as cohesive as it seemed. There were cliques, rivalries, and a general reluctance to trust one another. At first, Emma felt overwhelmed. She was used to working hard and proving herself, but now, she had to prove herself as a leader. She couldn't afford to let her doubts get the best of her. Instead, she focused on the task at hand. She knew that if she could bring everyone together, if she could get them to understand the value of collaboration, they would be unstoppable. One afternoon, during a particularly tense meeting, Emma decided to take a different approach. She gathered the team in a conference room, but instead of jumping straight into the business at hand, she opened up with something personal. She told them about her journey, the struggles she had faced, the obstacles she had overcome, and the lessons she had learned along the way. She wasn't trying to win sympathy. She was trying to show them that success didn't come from being perfect. It came from being resilient, from learning to adapt, and from finding strength in the people around you. At first, the room was quiet. But then, slowly, one by one, her colleagues started to open up. They shared their own challenges, their own experiences, and slowly, the tension in the room began to dissipate. Emma realized that by being vulnerable, she had created an environment where others felt safe to do the same. It wasn't about her proving herself anymore. It was about them proving to each other that they could work together for a common goal. Over the following weeks, Emma continued to lead with that same openness. She fostered an atmosphere of trust and transparency, where everyone's input was valued, and where failure was seen as an opportunity to learn, not a reason to point fingers. Slowly but surely, the team began to gel. They started collaborating more effectively, pushing each other to think bigger and bolder. And as they did, Emma's confidence grew. She wasn't just leading a team, she was building something that could truly make an impact. The results were immediate. The project that Emma and her team had been working on began to take shape. They were ahead of schedule, and their ideas were becoming a reality. Emma's leadership was paying off. She was no longer the outsider trying to prove herself. She was a leader, respected and admired by her colleagues. And as the project moved forward, Emma's influence began to extend beyond just her team. Richard Keegan, who had been watching her progress from the sidelines, took notice. He saw the transformation in Emma, not just in her work, but in the way she carried herself. She was no longer hesitant or uncertain. She was a force to be reckoned with, and Richard couldn't help but be impressed. "You've done it, Emma," Richard said one afternoon, pulling her aside after another successful meeting. "I've watched you grow, and I have to say, I'm proud of what you've accomplished. You've turned this team around. You've brought them together in a way I didn't think was possible." Emma smiled, grateful for his words, but she knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. She had proven herself, not just to Richard, not just to her team, but to herself. She had shown that leadership wasn't about being in charge. It was about empowering others, about guiding them toward a shared vision. And now, with the project moving forward and the team united, Emma knew she had just scratched the surface of her potential. There were bigger challenges ahead, bigger opportunities to seize. But Emma was ready for whatever came next. She wasn't just a waitress turned executive anymore. She was Emma Jones, a leader with a future as bright as the city lights shining outside her office window. As she looked out over the skyline that had once seemed so distant, Emma knew one thing for sure. She was just getting started. Months had passed since Emma had taken on the leadership role at Keegan Industries, and with each passing day, she felt more confident in her place. The team she had once struggled to unite was now a well-oiled machine, working together seamlessly, pushing boundaries, and achieving results that were previously thought impossible. Emma had proven to herself, and to others, that her success wasn't a fluke. It was the result of hard work, dedication, and an unwavering belief in the power of collaboration. But even as things seemed to be falling into place, Emma knew that success wasn't something that could be taken for granted. She had come so far, but she had also seen just how quickly things could change. The pressure to maintain her position, to continue leading with the same level of excellence, was something she carried with her every day. It was during one of the company's quarterly presentations, when Emma was up in front of the board, that she felt the weight of it all. She was there to present the results of the International Expansion Project, a project she had spearheaded from the very beginning. As she stood in front of the room full of executives, her mind was sharp, her voice steady, and her presentation flawless. Yet, as she glanced around the room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Richard Keegan, who had been supportive from the very beginning, sat at the head of the table, listening intently, but there was something different in his expression. He was looking at her with a level of intensity that made her stomach churn. The presentation went smoothly, and as she wrapped it up, Richard stood to address the room. His praise for Emma was genuine, but there was an undertone of something more. "What Emma has accomplished is remarkable," Richard said, his voice carrying across the room. "She's turned this company around in ways I never expected. But let's not forget, there's still work to be done. We've only just scratched the surface. Emma, you've proven yourself, but now it's time to push even harder." The words hit her like a wave. She had expected praise, but not this. This reminder that the journey was far from over. Richard's gaze lingered on her for a moment, and she couldn't tell if he was challenging her or motivating her. Either way, it didn't matter. She had already made her decision. The work wasn't over, but she was ready for whatever came next. As she left the meeting, Emma's mind raced. She had achieved so much, but Richard was right. There was always more to be done. And she wasn't going to stop now. The pressure, the late nights, the sacrifices, they were all part of the journey. But as she looked back on everything she had accomplished, Emma realized that this was no longer just about proving herself to others. This was about proving to herself that she could continue to rise, no matter the obstacles. That night, as Emma sat in her office, looking out over the city skyline once again, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. The journey had been long, but she had finally found her place. She was no longer the waitress in the background. She was Emma Jones, a leader, a force to be reckoned with. And as she looked ahead, she knew that the future was hers to shape. No matter how many challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same determination and grace that had gotten her this far. She had earned her place at the table, and now, she was ready to lead, to innovate, and to continue breaking down barriers. With the lessons of her past, and the strength of her present, Emma was prepared for whatever came next. This was only the beginning of her journey, and the world was waiting for what she would do next.